Now that it's seed starting season, you are going to see some of the content on my channel, which doesn't have much content, switch over to starting seeds, starting things like ginger, sweet potato slips, and all things gardening. I have some footage from the last week of me starting ginger. This is the way that I start ginger just about every year. This is the method that I've found has worked the best, and I will probably start a little playlist about it since it's going to take a few weeks for the ginger to sprout and send up shoots and send down roots. So I will save all of these videos to a playlist, and you can follow along if you would like to start your own ginger. I have 2 big pieces of ginger here, and I would like to sprout this for spring planting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up into pieces and cure them so that they callus over like that, and then I can sprout each individual piece instead of sprouting the entire piece and then having to break it up afterwards. So this is just store-bought ginger. It's not organic. I bought it at Aldi. And what I'm going to do is break off each one of these little nubs right here. That will grow into a sprout. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This one has 12 just up here. I'm not going to split them all individually. I'm going to try to split them into chunks like that. That has 3. Whoops. I do not want to do them this small because sometimes they will dry out. I might need a knife, a really nice clean knife, and then like that size is good. Oops, that's good. This one also has teeny little sprouts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's about 5 on there. Caleb, come back here. And then, yep, even this last chunk. So before I start the process of trying to sprout this, I want these wounds to callus over. If they don't callus over and you go through the process that I go through to wake the ginger up and sprout it, they would probably rot. So I'm going to just like you do potatoes, when you chit potatoes or you cure potatoes before, when you want to sprout potatoes, you take the potato and you cut them up 2 eyes per piece, and then you would usually let them dry out a little bit before you try to stick them in the ground. So it's like the same principle as that. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one's a little tricky because it's very small. We'll just do this. I'll leave that together. Yep, and I'm gonna leave that together. I'll probably end up buying more ginger. It's just gonna sit like that until these wounds callus over, and then I will show the rest of the process after that happens. And what you're looking for this to turn into is like that. So that's calloused over. It might not be that calloused because I'm not gonna wait a super long time, but as soon as it's dry enough where this isn't wet anymore and I won't risk the chance of mold, then I will do the rest of the process. My ginger rhizomes, this is a rhizome, they have calloused over. Let's see if I can show you all the breaks. So there is one of the place we broke off the ginger. Here's another place we broke off the ginger. Let's see, this is yet another place. See how that's all nice and dry and calloused over? So we're ready to start preparing our ginger to sprout. The way that I like to prepare ginger is a couple of steps. The first one being, I like to call this step waking up the ginger. What I do is when I got the ginger, I gave it a good scrub. Then I broke it into pieces. Now I'm gonna put it, sometimes I do it in a plastic bag, sometimes I do it in just a little Tupperware or a glass container. We're going to put the ginger in a Ziploc bag, and I'm going to fill it with water and peroxide. I take the peroxide, I just use regular household 3% peroxide. I would say I use about 1/4 cup. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. You don't wanna put too much. I learned this way from a couple of people on YouTube a few years ago. Then you're just gonna add the water. I probably have 1.5 cups of water, and I probably need a little bit more than that. basically what the peroxide does is it cleans the outside a little bit more. Nope, Caleb, I gotta put him down. It cleans the outside of the rhizome a little bit more. Easy. And between the water and the peroxide, you're basically just giving it a really good soak. And what that does is, in my opinion, it just like wakes up the ginger. You can just soak it in water if you don't have peroxide on hand. I feel like everyone has their own way that they do this. This is just the way that I do it. And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna leave this for like 24 hours. You will take it out, rinse it really well, and then you can use whatever method of choice. For me, I'm probably going to start the ginger on a wet paper towel or a soilless method. Some people like to do it similar to starting sweet potatoes, where you just suspend it in water. That will work too. I don't like to stick toothpicks in the fruit or veg that I am trying to sprout. Vegetable. I don't think you do this with any fruit, but just in case. So I like to do it, if I go soilless, what I do is I get a shallow container. Let's say I'm gonna start my ginger in here. You get a shallow container and you put a very, very damp paper towel. You put maybe, again, another quarter of a cup of water in here. The paper towel is really, really soaked. I would do like a triple layer paper towel, and then you take your cleaned, soaked ginger pieces and you just place them on top. After about a week to 2 weeks, you'll start noticing that the tips of the ginger, on each ginger piece, you'll see little white nubs at the end. That is where your ginger is going to sprout from. When you're doing it in a soilless method, you'll notice that the ginger is activating. It is going into transition to start putting out shoots, and you can achieve that just on a wet paper towel. I usually do that at first because I don't have, like right now, we don't have any seed starting mix on hand. I don't have any potting soil. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a jump start on this, and I'm still going to start the ginger tomorrow in this Tupperware. After about 24 hours, you wanna take the ginger and just pour the water out. Oops, I think I'm gonna do this off camera. And like I had mentioned, I'm going to do this soilless. I'm just gonna put a paper towel in the bottom, just soaked it enough with water that when you press on it, you feel the moisture. If you see any pieces that have roots on them, this one does not. Let me see if I can find. Okay, see this piece, see those roots? If you can, it actually has roots on both sides. But if you can, position the roots against the damp paper towel. Yeah, those aren't roots, those are just hairs, fibers from the actual ginger. This one does not have roots. I think that was my only piece with roots that I could tell. And it doesn't matter if it's crowded in here. I'm just going to fill the entire container up. And believe it or not, that will, over the next 2 weeks, you'll begin to see the little white knobs on the end. Mine are a little yellow from being in the water, but those will start to protrude more. They will turn green and they will eventually sprout. Once I see signs of growth on those, I will transfer these into soil. But for now, because we don't have any on hand and because I don't know which pieces are gonna make it and which ones aren't, I'm just going to proceed with the soilless method. A couple of things you want to look out for is mold. You want to make sure you're changing the paper towel just as often as it needs it. I usually change the paper towel after like 2 or 3 days. You also want to add some more water to the bottom of this. You can just dump it right in and just make sure it's evenly distributed, because the water will evaporate after a couple of days. It's pretty straightforward. You can add a few drops of hydrogen peroxide to this. So you can leave this setup right on the counter, or you can put it in your seed starting setup. You can also put it in a sunny windowsill. I have not seen a difference between like supplemental light or no light. I have done this is the 4th year that I've done ginger. You will see the little knobs on the end where the little white spots are. You will see those start to grow. The last time I tried this in soil, which was 2 years ago, or it might be 3 years ago now, it took a really long time to get going. So last year when I did it, when we were living in a rental, I didn't have any soil on hand. We weren't running to the store anytime soon. So I just tried the soilless method, and I found that this had sprouted them the fastest. Now, it could have been a fluke. It could have been that the ginger was really active already, but Most people that I know that have tried this way after I had posted about it said that it worked really well for them too. So we're gonna try it again. Along with the ginger, we have a few other seed starting projects. Well, I don't want to say seed starting, but we have a few other sprouting projects going on. We have sweet potatoes. I do not believe these are organic. I got these again from Aldi, just it was one of those netted sacks of sweet potatoes. So they're quite small, but sometimes small is better for sprouting. I don't have toothpicks in these, and I have toothpicks in these. The reason I don't like to start sweet potatoes in water is, quite frankly, just because it's a lot of work. You have to change the water out often. You run the risk of rotting. A lot of people like to start their sweet potatoes in really wide, like aluminum containers, like the aluminum, baking trays, and they'll just lay soil in that and then lay the potatoes flat. I've done that before too, but honestly, the method that works the best, and what I'm going to be transitioning these over onto, is standing them up in a cup full of soil and putting the potato just like you see here. For me, it's the least amount of maintenance, and it also requires the least amount of space. I wasn't able to get it on camera because my phone had died, sadly, but I transitioned some of my sweet potatoes over to a round container. This was an old protein powder that I just finished, and I'm able to fit 3 sweet potatoes in here. They're vertical, so they're not taking up all that horizontal space, and they'll root just fine in here. I know the top looks really dry, but the bottom, I would say the bottom 2/3 are pretty saturated. Now, as you can see, I don't have holes underneath. I don't like to put holes in this right away because I'm not going to keep this very saturated. It is very saturated right now, but it will dry out over the next 2 to 3 days, and I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of water when I feel that I've stuck my finger down there and it feels pretty dry. What I feel the benefits of this is versus this are a few things. I feel like the benefits of starting your sweet potatoes in soil is soil has a microbiome, soil has microbes in it, soil has beneficial activity, if you will. Whereas water, I'm sure there's something going on in there if I took a microscope, but like I had mentioned before, it tends to rot the potato a lot faster. Also, you're putting a toothpick in there, so you can see that damage. You can see that damage right there. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to ruin your propagating experience, but I've just found that my sweet potatoes do a lot better in soil, and I like to grow them vertically rather than horizontally because look at how much space I'm saving. If I were to put that in a big horizontal 10-20 tray with a lot of room, I just wouldn't get the same experience. Now, will I maybe eventually remove these and put them in individual say solo cups? I might do that. I don't have any solo cups on hand right now, but preference wise versus the water technique and even versus the horizontal soil technique, this is my, hey buddy, this is my favorite technique for starting sweet potatoes. And then the next project that we have going before really all the big seed starting kicks off is I have been sprouting herbs from the store. In here I have sage, which has already rooted, and I have some sprigs of rosemary. Let's see if I can take one out. My rosemary has not rooted yet. This is one of the stalks that I took out of the rosemary that I just bought from the store. To sprout rosemary or any herb from the store, I just get these little packets. Sometimes I can find bigger bundles of herbs, but the more woody herbs like this, I tend to only find in these little packets right now, just in your regular big box grocery store or regular big chain grocery store. You may see something like this. These bigger woody pieces, like this one, which I will break off. And I'm also going to take the rosemary off. I'm going to save it in this container because we don't want to waste anything. I'll probably dry that out. But you want to take off as many leaves as you can. And you want to make sure it's a nice big woody stalk like that versus something skinny like this one. I'm still trying with this one. Most likely I will have success with this one though. And how you do this is you take the stalk, or you take the piece of rosemary, carefully cut the end off at an angle. That's probably not my best angle. You want to dip it in some rooting powder. 1 bottle of this goes a really long way. So what I will do is take a little piece of paper towel, put some rooting powder on, and then just like envelop the stem in the rooting powder about 2 inches high. And then I'll place it into whatever jar I am trying to root the herbs with. I would say this one has 1 other viable stem. Again, you want to just take off as much of the greenery as possible. You want to take off as much greenery as possible, cut the stem on an angle, and then envelop or dip your stem into some good rooting powder. You can make homemade rooting powder too. I do not have a recipe for that right now, but I've done it before off of other people's recipes. And then you just have a little propagation station. And I keep this on a sunny windowsill because I know that these will benefit from sunlight. I would say the sage took about 2 to 3 weeks to root. Sometimes it can take longer. It just depends on what part of the season you're in. Sometimes, hey buddy. Sometimes when you're deep in winter, things don't want to root. My elderberries, I cut these in the summer and I didn't see rooting until a couple of, I would say a month ago. To finish off the video, I just want to talk a little bit more about the ginger. I've noticed a few little things as the ginger has been sitting, so I wanted to show you that. Okay, this is our ginger. This is our wet paper towel, which needs a change. So I'm going to change that after I end the video. But this piece right here, do you see that pink? That is pink mold. So what I will do to counteract anything that I see pink, black, or you can see white fuzzy spots. Let's see if I can find one of them. Okay, here's a really good example. See that white fuzzy spot there? There's actually some pink. That is mold. You can see this as your ginger starts to activate, as it sits on the paper towel and you're waiting for it to sprout. I don't really see any action yet. That might be, let me see. Yeah, that might be the only piece. Right there might be the only piece that I see a little bit of action, a little bit of lengthening of those sprouting nodes. But as the ginger sits, you do run the risk of mold. That is why I will add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide to the paper towel. That's actually something you can do with your sweet potatoes if you're doing them in water. It's something you can do with your elderberry. So after they root, the plant will start to actively take up water, and you'll notice that the water will evaporate pretty fast. So you don't need to add peroxide after that, but the peroxide will basically just help keep the water a little cleaner than it may be. When you have a propagation station like this, you do want to make sure you change the water out very frequently. I would say once a day, if not twice a day sometimes. To add the peroxide to the ginger, I take a little container, probably half a cup to a cup of water, and I put about a tablespoon. I would put a nice tablespoon in. You want to mix it really well, and then I will actually just pour it over any piece of ginger, like this one that had the pink mold. I will just pour it over any piece of ginger that has mold on it, or white mold. This is totally normal. It's just part of the seed starting or propagating experience. I've found that a little bit of mold isn't that big of a deal, but if you see any piece that has a lot of mold, you want to segregate it from the rest of the batch. If not, just completely throw it out. All right, so we're going to continue to watch all of these plants over the next couple weeks. I will keep everyone updated, and like I had mentioned before, I'll save all this to a playlist. So if anybody wants to watch how everything grows over the season, or come back to it, or even try some of these methods, you will be able to find it in one place. Can you say see you next time? See you next time. Bye.